We are so happy to have Roslynn with us. As she had mentioned, she is with Utah State. And Roslynn, I've got your biography if you don't mind reading it, if you don't mind me reading it off. You've got quite the amazing biography. Is that okay with you?
Sure.
Fabulous. Okay, so Dr. Roslynn is a Sustainable Communities Extension Specialist in the Department of Environment and Society, College of Natural Resources at Utah State University. She uses conservation theory, communication techniques, and social marketing tools to foster environmental behaviors in the areas of land, so such as conservation, reducing, reusing, and recycling, air, food, um, and a focus on CSAs and farmers markets, of course, water and energy. So all of the above. Roslynn also teaches communicating sustainability, helps facilitate the National Extension Sustainability Summit, runs a national database of sustainability-focused extension programs, and is the coordinator for the Utah Farm Chef Fork and the USU Permaculture Initiative and Sustainable U Kids Camps. Roslynn, you are a phenomenal human being. Thank you so much for taking time to chat with us today. We are very excited to have you here. So I will turn the time over to you.
Well, thanks so much. And like I said, this can be a more informal talk because it's a lunch break talk. I had planned it that way by just including many pictures. I was encouraged to give this talk regarding how I am an everyday environmentalist, and that was an entertaining thought. And it is something that is on my mind every day. I work on a national scale pretty often with climate issues and with the federal government on climate change initiatives, opening up funding chains for universities across the country to address climate change through adaptation and mitigation. And with all that in mind, and as a sustainable community specialist, of course, I also try to model these behaviors in my life. And I shouldn't say try, I do model these behaviors in my life. And I found a real fault in sustainability has been communicating it in a way around loss. So take shorter showers, don't drive a car. And human beings have evolved to be loss adverse. We avoid loss because it's a scarcity mindset and are more drawn towards an abundance mindset. And so I'm very careful. I'm a communications person. I think a lot about how to communicate these issues to people to get them excited and motivated to change their own behaviors. And one way that I do that is through communicating all the benefits that you can reap through living a sustainable lifestyle. So for example, I bike to work every day, and there's a whole range of health benefits, psychological benefits, of course, the physical benefits and psychological benefits of biking, and social benefits of interacting more with your community, stopping to talk with neighbors as you're on your way to work, and interacting more with the sights and smells around you. And then when you get to work, research shows you're actually more focused and ready to engage in the workplace environment through a bike commute. And so instead of saying, oh, don't drive your car, ride your bike, instead communicate all of the benefits that you can reap from engaging in that sustainable behavior that make it attractive. So it was mentioned in the intro, my work in Utah Farm Chef Fork, and I'll just share a fun thing that just came out. Let me go ahead and share my screen. The Moab Sun News just published this article about Moab Grown Initiative that myself and my friend and colleague Cherie Duncan are working on. We just launched this logo this year for branding across the Moab community at restaurants to show which restaurants are committed to sourcing from local growers within a 100-mile radius. And that's been a really fun project to work on. Of course, some of my programming is Moab specific just because I live in Moab, but also much of my program is statewide and national. Okay, so if anyone in the group is willing to take a split second before I just talk at you for a little while about my own life, I'm curious to know just a really quick overview of the main interests of some people in the room, and then also maybe one or two things you hope to get out of a talk from an everyday environmentalist. Anyone willing to share that?
While everyone's thinking, I'll get started. Just personally for me, I think that when we talk about becoming environmentalists, it seems daunting, that it seems like a very large thing to do, like save the earth, right? And that can be overwhelming, I think, at first. But also, I feel like, when they talk about making your home more energy efficient, sometimes things can get quite expensive, right? Like making the switch with your vehicles, or some of the products in your home can get quite expensive. So, I don't know, maybe looking for something, the small changes, right, that we can do every day, like you said, focusing on the positive, more adding mindset rather than the taking away, and how maybe we can shift that within our homes. I don't know, a little bit of everything, I guess.
Yeah, the little things, that's really helpful. Anyone else willing to share something they're hoping to get out of the talk today?
I will. I'll throw in. So I am a health educator for the lead poisoning program, prevention program. So I am curious to see, what kind of information, aside from improving on a personal level, but what kind of information I can bring with relevance to our program, in that, argument, fight for clean soil, clean air, stuff like that. So.
Great, thank you. Okay, and as questions come up, obviously feel free to ask them at any point. I'll go ahead and now share the presentation, and that's great to have a bit of a guidepost as we go into the talk. And like I said, very picture oriented, but I've broken down this talk into various levels of how I incorporate sustainability into my life. So, and various scales. So the neighborhood scale, the home scale, a lens of being a mother, my work scale, and also the policy scale. So we'll cover a range of things and hopefully get at many of your interests, and things that are left out, do feel free to ask me those afterwards. We'll hopefully have ample time for Q&A. Okay, here we go. All right, so yeah, what a fun talk to think about, Everyday Environmentalist. I first of all want to share that this is a picture of my north garden at my house, and that's a solar light in the foreground. But these gardens are 100% watered by Graywater. So every time I shower or do laundry, there is a 2-inch pipe at a 2% grade that feeds from my house to my landscape. And there's 2 outlets in this basin you're looking at, and then there's 1 outlet in my east basin. And I design at the forefront a system that will minimize my workload over time. And so I joke that I'm a lazy gardener, but it's really true. I prefer to live a way that serves multiple functions. So for example, when I shower, then I also water my cherry tree and my peach tree, my nectarine. I have 2 cherry trees in the front, and currant bushes, lavender. Here you see echinacea, and various different pollinator species, and also edible species in my Graywater system. Research from California, and there's some studies that have happened in New Mexico around this topic, are showing that any heavy metals in a Graywater system aren't translating through the woody stems into fruit. And so it's fine to eat fruit from woody stem plants, perennial plants in a Graywater system, which also serve the benefit of sequestering carbon at a better scale than annuals. And so I grow woody stem perennials in my Graywater system that I eat, and but I don't grow lettuce, for example, in my Graywater system, mainly also because it would taste like soap probably. Okay, so let's talk about the neighborhood first that I live in. As you know now, I live in MOAB, and I live in a neighborhood called Mulberry Grove. Mulberry Grove is a neighborhood that has permanently preserved open space for everyone who lives in the neighborhood. That's at a conservation easement in organic agriculture. And so there's various parts of open space. There's a forested area, this orchard area you see here. There's a community garden area. And the lots are very small, but when your lot, like this house, my neighbor Tony, That's his house. You can see the straw bales there in the wall of his house before it was plastered over. That house looks like it has a huge lot because it backs into the forest. And that's designed intentionally in the lot plan. And I'm just going to go through this slide really quickly to give you a feel that all these lots, when they were designed, have a checklist and have to touch 1 to 2 minimum open space areas. So for example, lot 1 here, you have the parkland and Mulberry Grove pathway. So they have 2 public space access areas in the lots, but the lots themselves are very small. You can see right here compared to traditional lot sizes in rural areas like MOAB. These are pretty small lots, and then the larger ones are duplex lots. Okay, so this is my neighborhood plan, Mulberry Grove, just to give you a visual of how this is laid out. So all the numbers are house lots, and then all of this open space here is public space. So a community garden is here, orchard here, forest space here. Here is a drought tolerant grass space with an overstory of mulberry trees. And then there's also open space that hasn't yet been designed near the floodplain. And then this is all floodplain from Mill Creek. So just a great setup in the neighborhood around sustainability and well-being, just in the way the neighborhood itself is designed. Small lot sizes with communally owned open space. So honing in on the home scale, here's my house in the neighborhood. You can see some houses are still being built in Mulberry Grove. This was taken a little while ago. This house is done, and this house just got finished this year. But so this is the orchard space, and now this is a communally owned garden space in here that's not pictured at the time this photo was taken. But my house is 100% electric, so there's no gas line that runs to the house, and I actually feed the grid solar energy through our solar panels on our south-facing roof, and the walls are straw bale of the house, and you can see the big south-facing windows. It's passive solar design, so the summer sun is at a higher angle, and that will not penetrate the south windows, but the winter sun actually is at a lower angle, and that winter sun actually goes through these south windows and heats my floor and my house, resulting in very minimal need to run my electric on demand floor heater. And then this is now plastered over and complete, but this is the rain tank in my backyard. It's a 750-gallon rain tank. In the state of Utah, we can harvest up to 2,500 gallons per parcel in above or below ground tanks, and that's at a time. So you could fill up 2,500 gallons, use it, and then fill it up again multiple times in just 1 year by our state code. It's a very progressive rainwater harvesting code, and many people don't even realize that rainwater harvesting is legal in our state. This is the north side of the house. You can see this is the bike path there, and so it's really great. I have 2 kids, and they can run around outside, and I don't have to worry about them being hit by a car. And then this is a peach orchard behind my house, and this small fence area is the footprint of my personal property. I purposely don't have a fence in the front yard, and all these trees now have the fence pulled off of them because they're large enough for not having major deer damage, but that's to encourage walkers by to just pull a peach or a cherry off the tree in the front yard and harvest that. This mindset of giving back in our, when you live a sustainable lifestyle, you produce abundance, and allowing that abundance to share with other people around my house who come to visit or just walk by is something that's important to me. And then our bikes that we use for bike commuting, those are now stored in a different area, but here's the bike trailer that I use to take my kids to work or to daycare every day before I go to work. And we had this tool trailer. Unfortunately, it was taken from our carport area a while ago. I hope it has a great next life, but we no longer have that. So the front porch we designed, my husband and I, and sourced FSC certified wood, so sustainable certification for wood production. And we also source all of our wood from local mills, and that is the bulk of our porch wood was harvested from a mill near Dolores, Colorado, which is not that far from MOAB. Here you can see this is the aspen tongue and groove on the top, and then the walls before they were plastered. This is called chinking, where all of the cracks of the straw bales, they're literally straw bales in the wall that have an R value of around 35. So very strong insulative value with straw bale. And this is plaster to insulate in between the cracks of the bales. We compact them as best as possible, which is great stress relief. Coming home from the office, being able to take a big mallet and hammer the straw bales down. That was really fun. So this just shows a detail of the window before we finish the house. So the straw bale all the way up to the window, and then the thickness of the straw bales, they're stacked on edge. So they're not as thick as if they were laying flat, but on edge to allow less material needs of plaster in that when you have the width of the window, etc. But it is wide enough that these windowsills also serve as benches now that the house is complete. So here's an example of me post-work one day, hammering these straw bales down with a big mallet. Very fun to do that as you build. So Utah does not allow weight-bearing straw bale housing, but you are allowed to put in straw bale with post and beam. So the support of the roof is on the post and beam, but you minimize your material use by using an agricultural byproduct. So straw bales being an agricultural byproduct to insulate your house, and it really decreases the carbon footprint of your house over time. Here's the kitchen area. So all of our appliances are LED and energy efficient appliances in the kitchen. Induction stove for cooking, and just a high energy electric stove or induction stove that just uses electricity. The reason that we did that instead of a gas stove is we didn't want to run any gas line to the house and then totally avoid paying a gas bill. So we have no gas bill. Our monthly energy bill, because we feed the grid, is just over $10 a month. And that's all I pay for all of my energy in my house. Here's another picture of the kitchen, and just showing that's the induction stove that we use there, and natural light from outside, and then the LED lighting overhead. All of the furniture in the house is bought, well, not all, almost all the furniture of the house is bought used, and so it ends up being a little mismatched, but I save a ton of money that way. So this oak table, for example, was one of my neighbors was considering tossing that, and we sanded it down and got rid of all the paint and scratches on it and just sealed that, and then mismatched chairs that were given away by multiple people in the MOAB community. And then a table, same thing, that a colleague was getting rid of. I bought the couches. We just bought a different used couch and sold the couch set, but I had bought this one used, and our new one is also used. And also the house plants. People give me a lot of house plants, and I end up just having those secondhand from people. Here's a picture of the bathroom. And so the shower is just on the right side of the picture. And that shower is part of what gravity feeds out to the north side of the house landscaping. And then the bedroom, this is chopped straw. If you look really closely, you can see some pieces of the chopped straw on the wall. So we put chopped straw on the plaster as kind of like a reveal that underneath there's full straw bales. And then here's the example of the windowsill I was talking about that you can also use as a bench to stack functions there. All of our flooring in the house is earth and plaster. And so we put down radiant on-demand heat, so water tubes in the floor that can heat in the winter. But on top of that is an earth plaster mix. And I just love the feel of that when you walk in the house. It's not as cold as concrete would be, and it's got a way lower carbon footprint, obviously, than concrete. And then the only concrete we poured in our house was actually in the bathroom by code, and then the footer around the walls. And we don't have any concrete in the main areas of the house. So this wood for the bed here, this was leftover porch materials. We just made use of that. My husband was crafty enough to turn that then into our bed frame. This is the upstairs of the house. So anyone who's been to the MOAB area has probably seen the green clay layer north of town, and that green clay layer is beautiful as a plaster as well. And so we harvested that and plastered it onto our walls, and this is the end result of that nice light lime green, not lime, but nice light green color. And then you can see here the LED lighting on top. And that's bamboo flooring in the upstairs of the house. That's really strong, great bamboo floor that we've really enjoyed. And then this is looking the opposite direction. So the south side of the upstairs of the house, and then the stairs right here going down. And yeah, just to show again, all this is used, donated, or from thrift stores, which has been really great, minimizing our costs. And then this is the screen area of the porch. So this is just earth and plaster over the lower part of the wall, and then a screen on top. And this is a great yoga room. Right now we're using it as bike storage, but we have a plan to change that in the near future. So just some fun photos of the house to show you first the neighborhood scale of sustainability, and now honing in on the house, how we built our house. And now I'll talk a little bit about, you know, as someone who lives in a state, I think it's part of my responsibility, not just as a professor, but as a resident of Utah, to fight for positive change in our state. And so I've done a couple things that have helped open up this possibility for others. The first is the Graywater policy of the state. When I was putting a Graywater system into my house, the policy was extremely restrictive. It required a tank and a pump and engineered plans, and not a single house in the state of Utah had registered their Graywater system. So there was a problem there in the code, right? In that no one was actually going through it properly because the code was so restrictive. So I worked with our local health department and Jeff Adams from Terra Sophia, an ecological design company, and pulled together a team to rewrite Utah's Graywater policy. And that launched and was approved with no pushback in the spring of 2020. So one positive thing happened that very stressful spring, and that is the state of Utah got a new Graywater policy to gravity feed landscapes without requirement at the residence scale of a pump or tank or anything, just with a 2-inch pipe at a 2% grade. And the reason that I helped work on that is because of water in the state of Utah. This is a quote from the UN Human Development Report, and I'll let you read this for a second. So this quote really means a lot to me. And, you know, we live in a state with a water crisis, and yet I see a huge water opportunity because we aren't making wise use of our water currently. And I'm not saying that's a blame of any one of us individually. It's a blame of the systems at play that are promoting still landscapes that are water consumptive, and not landscapes that actually are integrated in design, making best use of rain flow on property, and then also of graywater potential. So in an integrated design, when rainwater hits my roof, it flows off the north side in a sheet flow into basins that are growing those cherry trees and nectarine and peach, and then the graywater supplements that water source. And then on the south side of my house, that is fed through a drip irrigation, water-wise irrigation system, and then my rain tank, 750 gallons, that I use and connect with a hose to gravity feed out to the landscape. So that is how I water the south side of my property as well. So graywater is important because when we look at household water use by fixture, in the state of Utah, you can pull graywater from shower, your clothes washer, and your bathroom sink. So obviously not the toilet, that's black water. In Utah, you aren't allowed to tie that to your graywater system. But if you add up your shower and your bath, we're talking 23% of your indoor household use of water. And that is over 30 gallons per household per day, just from those two sources, average household in the US. So here's my Graywater system in the front as I'm cleaning it out, which I do every other year or so. I just shovel around the mulch shield. You can see here this mulch shield, that's where the pipe comes out. There's an air gap that drops that water down into this root system here. By code, you have to have 6 inches of cover. So I use mulch cover for that, from where the water hits the ground to the surface. And look how dark and wonderful this mulch is that I've pulled out from around that mulch shield. And I use that to fertilize plants in my backyard that aren't tied with the Graywater system. And I'm about to do that actually this week again. This was a couple of years ago, this picture. But definitely the tree roots of this cherry tree, in hindsight, if I was to turn back time, I would put this tree a little further away from that mulch shield because it really likes to tap in and take that water, and I have to cut those roots back. And yeah, just excellent soil health, tons of earthworms in there, and great fertilizer for my backyard. Oh, funny, I see the pumpkins on the porch. It's the same time of year as right now. So this is another picture just looking west at the north side of my house. And so this is a Lapin's cherry, and then a nectarine in behind, and then all of the flowers that either I've planted or have volunteered at. This dogbane has a strong indigenous history in our community, many indigenous uses of that specific plant. And then also the sunflower, I have a huge sunflower community that has just volunteered on site. Didn't plant any of it. And I have a lot of horsetail, which tells me I have a high water table at my house. Here's another picture of that Graywater system. You can see all the peaches. I'm halfway through both basins right now, looking east still into the westernmost basin. So that's a big harvest we had a couple of years ago. And then, of course, pollinators are on my mind. MOAB has around 500 bee species within the city limits of MOAB alone. In fact, the southern half of Utah has more bee diversity than the entire eastern US east of the Mississippi. That's just the southern half of our state. We have a huge bee diversity in Utah, over 1,000 different bee species here. And I do ensure that I have at least 3 flowering species, different species flowering each time of the growing season, so that there's a constant food source for pollinators. And I love to see that on my landscape. Blanket flower there. And then, yeah, I reapply mulch every couple of years instead of grass. So one thing I do want to do, because mulch isn't very friendly for bare feet, is to just put a brick pathway right up here, and then on the other side that wouldn't, so I can walk out barefoot to the bike path. But the rest of this front yard will continue to be mulch cover. And mulch has a great range of benefits: soil cooling, water retention, encourages over time as it decomposes strong fungal growth in the soil, which has tons of benefits for your plants. And I really enjoy using mulch as a layer, and it's a byproduct from city maintenance that I buy from the city of MOAB. Okay, and this is the cover photo you saw of the basin already. So it wouldn't be enough to just change policy for the state. What I worked on after that happened was a publication about graywater systems, so anyone could understand what graywater is and what the new code actually says and how to do this in their own counties. So that is a publicly accessible publication now through USU Extension. If you just were to search graywater systems, Utah State, it would come up. Okay. Oh, there is a couple more things with policy, but I think I'll get into them in these latter slides. So we'll stop with Graywater on that part for a minute and pause, and then talk about community for a second. Oh yeah, so this is where I put in the other policy things, I guess because they're more community related at scale, not statewide. So it's fun. People in MOAB refer to me sometimes still as the plastic bag ban lady. I used Park City's plastic bag ban. Luke Carton and Celia Peterson and their team did a great job drafting the plastic bag ban for Park City, but it was only for large scale businesses over a certain square footage. And I I took out that caveat and just made the plastic bag ban for all businesses in the city of MOAB. Received strong public encouragement for that and presented that to the council, city council, and that was passed and enacted. Unfortunately, COVID, like in many communities, set that back because there was this undocumented through any research, but rumor that went around that reusable bags might carry the virus. And so many grocery stores stopped allowing people to bring reusable bags, even though that has been debunked as a major health concern. We're still trying to catch up now to where we were before when the bag ban first went through. It was amazing to go to the store and hardly anyone had, had to take bags from the store. If you went to City Market, for example, they can give out paper bags. They have to be at least 40% post-consumer waste. So I would see plastic bags flying all over the community. It was driving me crazy. With all the tourists here, they get like a couple items in a bag, and then when they're done with it, it floats away, maybe in the back of a truck or something like that. And I was so sick of seeing them, and knowing it was just an easy win-win for everybody to push through a ban. Park City already did the research on incentive programs versus bans. And if you incentivize people to bring their own bag, it's much less effective than actually just saying businesses can't supply plastic bags for people. And turns out that people have been able to just walk out of the business holding their objects or using a paper bag with at least 40% post-consumer waste. So this is when that went through first in 2018, and then there was an updated publication about it in 2021. And then green infrastructure is one that I'm working on right now with the city of MOAB. So as many of you probably saw on the news, MOAB just had a 100-year flood event, and we've had a lot of flooding this summer. Green infrastructure is shown as extremely effective for reducing the impact of flood events through check dams higher in the watershed, but also through curb cuts and indented basins like you see pictured here throughout a city to better slow spread sink that water throughout town before it rages into one common creek system. And so the Watershed Management Group has done a lot of research on the benefits of green infrastructure, specifically these curb cut swale inlets at the side of streets. And in Utah, we build very wide streets. There's a lot of potential to increase green infrastructure on our street systems. And the benefits include reducing urban heat island effect through increased tree canopy, traffic calming, stormwater management, increased food production, carbon sequestration. There's a lot of benefits. And these are just a few that I've pulled out as the major ones that are important to me, but with green infrastructure. And so MOAB City just hired a new sustainability director for the city. She was actually my PhD student at Utah State prior to taking on this role. And we just met the other day to talk about green infrastructure and how to push through some policies, incentivizing people to transition their landscapes, to retrofit their landscapes, to incorporate better green infrastructure and also rainwater onto the property. Okay, so how you can also be an everyday environmentalist. Things that I've done. I think about the social fabric of my community and the unhelpful isolation that is talked about and promoted through some of our media and ways to overcome that. And one thing I do is I host occasional clothing swaps where I invite several of my lady friends and we all get together with our old clothes and jewelry and have piles like the skirt pile, the shirt pile, jewelry pile, and serve drinks and food. And we have this great social event. And I'm thinking of hosting one next month. I haven't done it in quite a while, but I've really enjoyed doing that. And this is something easy that any of us could do, right? And usually our friends have clothes that we like and they're sick of, and it works out really well. And then any extra clothing I bring to the Wabi Sabi thrift store here, so that then goes on to have more benefits, because not every time there's a bunch of stuff that's not taken. And so that goes to the thrift store, and then 100% of Wabi Sabi's profits actually go towards other nonprofits in MOAB. So the ripple effects of doing events like this just go on and on. And then this is something we do every year. We also have a Christmas Day potluck for people who are in MOAB who don't have family nearby, might be feeling lonely in the holiday season. We invite everyone over to do a big potluck and celebrate at our house. And so We call it Friendsgiving instead of Thanksgiving, and that's a fun celebration. And then for Christmas, it's the Island of Misfit Toys Christmas, where everyone just comes over who's feeling lonely and celebrates together. I'm going to just take a second to pause because that was a lot that I've already thrown at you, and just see at this point, is there any questions that have come through? Brittany, I haven't been following the chat.
No, you're totally fine. We just have two comments in there. Laura said earlier that her power bill was reduced by 3/4 just by putting her AC on 80 degrees Fahrenheit all summer, which is awesome. That's huge. 3/4 cutting it down, and that also saves your wallet too. And then Patty said that she has 200 gallons for rainwater, and I know that it's been quite a big taboo with like harvesting rainwater too, that a lot of people are nervous about doing that because, you know, in past times that perhaps maybe it wasn't legal or they just weren't sure how to do that, or so that was really cool that you touched on that. I don't have anything else in the chat. Does anybody have any questions that they wanted to throw in there, or unmute yourself as of right now?
And yeah, as they come up, you can always just ask too.
Perfect.
I'd say one thing, best practice with a rain tank is to ensure that you have an overflow that's intentionally designed. So your overflow is when that rain tank fills up, you have a pipe that comes out towards the top that pulls any excess water out to your landscape and somewhere where you want to water, because your rain tank will overflow if it's anything, you know, under 500 gallons or so, and even that will overflow. My 750 gallon overflowed several times this summer, and that's just the south side of my house. And 1,000 square foot roof in a 1-inch rain event, 1,000 square feet is this very small roof. In a 1-inch rain event, accounting for 20% water loss through evaporation or bouncing off, will still harvest around 500 gallons. And that's just a 1-inch rain event.
Wow.
So people putting in 50-gallon rain barrels, we joke that they're the gateway drug. They're great to get people excited about rainwater harvesting, but they aren't extremely effective as a tool to supplement your water use in your backyard, and they'll overflow in no time. So if you have a rain barrel that's intentionally got overflow to feed into your landscape, that's a great use of a rain barrel. You just want to make sure that your overflow is intentionally put in there to guide to water their plants. Okay, now let's talk about motherhood for a second. I've got 2 little boys, a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. Well, a 6-year-old now, he just turned 6. So I definitely get them outside as much as possible. And don't worry, they still have their screen time. I live in today's day and age, and sometimes you need your electronic babysitter. I will be the first to admit that. But I really balance that with a lot of outdoor time, and both my boys thankfully love biking. So this is my 3-year-old biking at Bar M on Lazy Easy, and my 6-year-old now is already taking some drops. It's just making me nervous, but and then very interested in wild harvesting. I've done a ton of research as a mom to make sure that what they're eating is okay to eat. I don't let them eat wild mushrooms because I don't know enough about wild mushrooms. And so here's a picture from this summer. We went to visit family up in Alaska, and yeah, just try and prioritize that as much as possible over screen time. I used reusable diapers until they fell apart. And I went through these with both my kids, and so that's why they looked so worn. And I don't have a dryer in my house. I only have a clothesline. Clothes dry in the desert by the time you're done hanging them up in the summer. So you can hang them up and immediately take them down when they're dry. And I'm not joking on that. It's true. You can finish, and then the first ones you start hanging up, you can already start pulling down. This time of year, it's usually like I hang things up for a day, but the sun does take a toll on things over time, and this is an example of that. But I loved using reusable diapers. Oh, I see someone put there, it just popped up on my screen, that they love the crunchy towel dry. I think of a clothesline. I also love the smell of clothes dried on the clothesline. I don't know why it became embarrassing or not okay to hang our clothes on the line, but I don't care about that, and I hang all my stuff on the line each day, every day, and I usually do 1 load of laundry a day. I have laundry on my line right now. and don't have a dryer. And that's part of why I'm able to, with the solar array I have set up, I don't use more energy than I'm producing. Oh, a couple other things with motherhood I'll just quick say before I go into my work is I have a stainless steel lunchbox that they take every day. We bike them to daycare. And yeah, I purchase things that I try to have reduced packaging. Of course, there's certain items where you're just gonna have packaging with that. I have a countertop composter, the Lomi, that turns your food waste and coffee grinds and paper towels into soil in 5 hours. It's pretty crazy and remarkable. I was not a good composter. Compost in MOAB just dries out because it's so dry here. So that countertop composter has been really helpful for me. Yeah, I definitely don't use disposable water bottles. There's a ton of health concerns actually with disposable water bottles, leaking phthalates as they heat in your car, which are directly linked to cancer producing in your body. And I'm a very strong advocate for reusable water bottles. Looks like
There is a question in the chat. Brooke asks, what do you do to dry during the winter? And I know in Moab it's a little bit warmer, but it still can get cold.
yeah, there's usually a 1 month period where I have a drying rack in my house that I have to use. Other than that, I don't worry about, it just goes outside and still dries. And so even if it's at freezing temperature with the sun on those clothes, it'll dry in the day. But I have definitely gone out to feel my laundry before and it's frozen solid.
Oh, okay.
But I do use an indoor rack in the winter. When I was using reusable diapers, I had to do laundry like 2 loads a day, the diaper load and the clothing load. And I will admit, that got difficult during January, especially where there were several overcast days. And I can remember it's about less, it definitely is less than 10 times over the period I was using reusable diapers that I had to use a neighbor's dryer to make sure that I had enough diapers to keep going. So, but yeah, I still just hang them outside in the winter or on an indoor rack. Okay. I see there's one more question. What was that it came through?
The question was, would you be willing to let us know about what your costs were for building your house? It's beautiful.
Oh, yeah, I'm always totally open. I don't think it's beneficial for us to be so secretive with our finances. And I think that transparency is really helpful for other people to work to improve their lives and just to see how people are doing things. So I don't have an exact number, and I say that because we paid a friend and my brother-in-law, we paid him some through the loan, but we paid an additional few dollars an hour out of pocket to just because I was able to do that with my savings, and I didn't keep track of the total of what that was. But our loan amount, and I'm embarrassed to say this because property prices have really increased in Moab, but my property when we bought it was $75,000. And that combined with, we designed and built ourselves. So our total loan, including that $75,000 for the property, was $266,000. And that's the total amount that I borrowed. And I had about, yeah, I had to put money down, and I can't remember the exact amount of that now, but I paid probably an additional 20 or so thousand out of pocket altogether. So that'll give you a ballpark.
So as far as like cost savings go, when you designed it and built it the way that you did, with the hay as insulators and things like that, do you think that that may be a more cost effective? I mean, definitely in the long run for sure.
Yeah, so my husband's actually an architect and does sustainable design for residential.
Oh, wow. Okay, awesome.
Answer these questions, but if you build yourself, straw bale is cheaper all around. So straw bale is less expensive on materials, but more expensive on labor. Conventional construction is more expensive on materials, less expensive on labor because it's faster to put up. You know, earth and plasters take a while. So if you're doing a lot of it yourself, it ends up being cheaper. Yeah, so for us, it was definitely cheaper.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. And you know, I like to just be completely honest about my life. There's so much more that I still could be doing. So we have 2 fossil fuel vehicles, and although I don't drive that, usually most weeks I go through a whole week without driving my car. On the weekends, once or twice, probably to go on a trip somewhere with the kids. But you know, I'd like to transition to electric, but the range is really hard for a place like MOAB, where you know, Salt Lake is above the general 220 or so range that your electric car will get. And there's more charging stations over time places, but it does make it hard when you live in such a remote area. But I would like to transition to an electric vehicle the next couple of years. Okay. So a couple of things about work with ecological design. On the old USU MOAB campus, we just moved to a new campus, but this was the view out my office window when I moved there in 2013 to 2014. And then I helped transition that site. We created Paradise, took out a parking lot to take that flow of water from my building, which went under the sidewalk and into the parking lot previously, to then water this swale at a 2% grade. This is permaculture design with all the plants designed of an overstory of food producing or nitrogen fixing or already shade existing trees, and then an understory of food producing, pollinator attracting, soil stabilizing, and nitrogen fixing plants. And then this is over time just grown up into this incredible oasis in this small urban area. The new campus incorporated a lot of the elements we had been working on the old campus. So these solar panels on the new USU MOAB campus, which is south of town, they shade the parking spots, which is fantastic. It's stacking functions, right? So you're producing energy while you're also providing shade. And then these basins are all indented without a curb. So when it rains, all that water flows into the indented basins and waters the plants. And you don't have curbs blocking that water flow. And so just an example, this is a net negative energy building. It's net zero right now, but they're predicting it's going to be a net negative, feeding the grid solar energy based on what we use for consumption. And then the landscaping is all native landscaping right now. I'd like to incorporate some food producing trees on the areas that get more water input, but not quite there yet. It's brand new. We just moved in this late spring. And so with that, just end with the last picture of the neighborhood of Mulberry Grove, and we have time for Q&A, I think. Yeah.
I'm blown away. It makes me so excited as you're talking about it with so much passion that you are living your life the way that you want, you know, what you're wanting to share with the world. And I think that is so cool. We have some other comments. There was one earlier. Laura put, just an FYI, my grandma would put the laundered linens out on the snow, and she said it would bleach the whites and remove the stains. Interesting.
Wow. You know,
We get a lot of snow here, so.
with reusable diapers, the sun was the best thing to use to take out the stains on the diaper. So
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense.
Super cool. Patty, I'm not entirely sure what your question was as far as what your carbon footprint would be specifically. So if you can put that in the chat or unmute yourself, that would be awesome. And then Lynn Erickson said that her sister is researching solar-powered cars as she lives in Hawaii, which is really cool. I think that just as what you've talked about and what others are mentioning is there's a lot of untapped potential. And I think too, even if we take a second and look at our everyday lives, becoming an everyday environmentalist is a lot more of a mindful experience, I think, than what perhaps what the modern day world has us living in, right? Because you're taking, as you said, like a lazy gardener, it's just using what you're already producing and then making it easier for yourself along the way. And I think that's the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, and I will say, you mentioned carbon footprint. You know, even if I was a zero waste person, there are people that live zero waste in the US, which is very inspirational. By nature of living in the US alone, you are still producing more Earths to live than we have available in resources. And so that's something to keep in mind, is that these are bigger issues than a lot of us have control of. And so I encourage people to live a sustainability ethic. It's not a rigid set of rules, because then you'll start beating yourself up over things. And I can definitely do that as well and feel guilty. Obviously, as a mom, you feel guilty half the time. I buy food packs and they're, one and done, throw it in the garbage. And I could make my own applesauce, but I have a full-time job and 2 kids. And
Mhm.
pandemic I navigated, I made no homemade baby food during that time because I just was surviving. So, but one thing I do with my lunches, I have glass containers with lids. This is my lunch today. I already ate it. And then stasher bags that I use. And I love these silicone bags. Here's another one that has an apple snack for afterwards with peanut butter that I'll have, or almond butter. And then, yeah, my tea in reusable cups. And there's no need to produce a lot of the waste we do on a daily basis. And if it's easy and timely, I'll do it. But if it's something, I'm just not someone who spends a lot of time, is able to spend a lot of time in the kitchen preparing foods. And so I tend to go for, I do one thing at the beginning, like buy a more expensive container, and then it's easy and fast over my whole life. Like I shower and I water my plants at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. I can definitely, when you had mentioned, the everyday environmentalist with a mom, I recently had a baby about 6 months ago, and it is insane how much, that we're having to use. Like, I think about all of the wipes, even in just like a one sitting. Like, if he eats something where he's getting to that point, I have to wipe him down every time. And that's at least 2 wipes. And so thinking about like those types of things, right? That it's like a really quick reusable, something that doesn't take a lot of time, but an easy swap that maybe would be more expensive on the forefront, but down the line you're not buying wipes every single time, or
Yeah, I
paper
had 2
towels,
things for
or
that.
yeah.
Paper towels I need to work on, but for the wipes, I had rags that I cut up and then small washcloths, and I just had them in their own pile. And then on the changing table, I had a bucket with baby-friendly soap in it, and I would just dunk a clean one in there, wipe, and throw it in the basket with the reusable diapers, and then wash all that together. And so that decreased my use of wipes with that. And then face wipes, I had a spray bottle that I used with a couple drops of essential oil, a couple drops of emulsified coconut oil, and then water. And I would just spray around their face or directly on the washcloth and wipe their face off, and then use that. So that's a quick, easy way to decrease those. But it takes time, that initial step of getting the reusable ones set up.
It definitely does, for sure, because and again, like the different seasons of our lives too, right? The different things that each one of us deal with, and maybe have, when maybe we're caretakers of an elderly individual or versus a baby or whatever it may be, trying to figure out how we can become that everyday environmentalist in the different seasons of our lives. Because what maybe perhaps worked prior, you might have to take a little bit of a shift in a mindset to say, okay, what can I do now?
It is.
So,
It's mindful living for sure, because our capitalist society is set up in a way to make us feel like we're broken, and the way to fix ourselves is to consume. That's how the capitalist model thrives, is through our consumption. And so you're making a mindful, radical decision to say, I don't buy into that. And how I'm going to get happiness is through engaging with my environment as I bike to work and not need to consume any fossil fuels on that commute. And to have a social event with friends where we trade our things instead of all of us go to the mall and buy all new stuff. So that's a radical mindset that is turning away from the mass capitalist model that we all are part of. And yeah, I buy things on Amazon now and then when I need to, and I live in this society, and that's just part of our lives. But I really reduce that, and it's like once every 6 months or so that I'll do that, and try to buy everything hyper local, especially if it's used. Yeah.
and I do
Advice.
think,
Sorry, go ahead.
go ahead. I was just going to read off of Patty's comment
Yeah,
in there.
I
It
saw
says,
that came through. I'm going to try and pull it up too.
It
Okay.
says I am trying to make changes to offset my carbon footprint in everything I do. And she was just commenting that she thinks that your carbon footprint must be very low then.
Oh, yeah. I haven't run that in a while. Um, by nature of being here, I still consume more earth than we have available, but I'm sure it's lower than the average American just by
Sure.
this ethic. And I love teaching this to kids, what we can do to make simple changes in our lives and increase awareness around that too. So, yeah, but I'm not sure how I compare to the average American. It'd be interesting to
Definitely
find out.
lower.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any other questions that they want to ask before we end today? We'll give it a second to flow through, but I just wanted to thank you so much for sharing your life with us, sharing pictures, as oftentimes, a lot of it is, let's do this, and this, but you're actually able to show us what it looks like by living that way. And thank you for giving us that insight into your life and being willing to be open and share that with us. What a treat.
This was
And everyone's saying thank you so much. Such a phenomenal presentation. It's been very informative. I agree. Um, Thank you so, so much for your time. It doesn't look like we have any other questions, but I really appreciate you and appreciate what you're teaching and trying to do for our environment too.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. This is really fun to talk about, and feel free to follow up with any questions or anything afterwards.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you so much.